So here we are. This is here we and Carrie. We have a thing we call Worship Colloquium, and we get together about every uh, 4 to 6 weeks. All my worship majors, and that includes worship leadership majors and worship technology majors. Bring us all together from freshmen to seniors. And obviously, right now in the middle of this crazy COVID-19 thing, we can't do that. So, but what that's allowing us to do is utilize technology and bring together some great friends and still chat about some great stuff that would be applicable for my worship majors. And so for those of you watching, I'm joined by Jason Millsaps, worship pastor, and then BJ, his MD. And I'll let maybe Jason, you tell us a little bit about the church and what at least what's normal. What would a normal Sunday morning experience look like, and what do you have on stage? And then we can, bring in BJ. And I'm pointing this way because you're on my left on my screen right now, and Jason.
All right.
So it's like a very Brady Bunch thing going on right now. So,
So
tell us about Bell Shoals.
we're in Brandon, Florida, which is right outside Tampa, Florida. And a normal Sunday for us would be about 130 in the choir and 18, 20-piece orchestra with a band. We've got drums, two electric guitars, acoustic, bass, and BJ on keys. And then we'll have a vocal team out front that consists of anywhere from 4 to 6 people, sometimes even down to 3 people, just depending on the day. But it's a pretty full stage each Sunday. We do 2 identical services on Sunday morning, and we are a church of 5 campuses, so we're a multi-site church. So,
okay, so asking this question, over the 5 campuses, musically and technically, do they each have their own personalities on worship teams, on song choices, blah, 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 or is there some sort of interconnectivity here?
Right now, it is their own separate personalities. Now, they all kind of have that Bell Shoals feel, but they're all kind of separate right now. We are trying to move more into to a position of being more one church, one Bell Shoals. We'll start actually meeting together more, planning together more. We're it's a new day. We've got a new lead pastor, and we're moving in that direction.
Nice. Well, maybe this is a good way to bring in BJ. I got me a list of questions here. To those who aren't familiar with what MD even is, and even if they hear what MD stands for, there could be some confusion by those who just don't know. They hear music director, they may be thinking, well, isn't Jason the music director? Because that seems like that makes sense, you know. Jason, are you called a worship pastor?
Yeah.
Okay. So worship pastor, some would go, okay, that's the music director. Well, as we're learning, churches are expanding out staff and responsibilities and what have you. And so that's bringing on the role of what we're calling the MD. So you, BJ, as that there, maybe why don't you explain what you see as MD, and we'll keep diving through this conversation.
So typically an MD is the person that, and generally they play, whether it's guitar or a piano, will oversee the band, make sure everybody has charts, do rehearsals, sometimes with just band, sometimes band and orchestra. They'll be involved in vocal rehearsals, and basically just kind of making sure everything runs smooth, communicates with the worship leader as far as what all they want to do for that particular Sunday, kind of strategize plans for special moments in services and so on. Jason and I have a very unique relationship. I've known him for probably over 15 years, so I've known him for quite a while before I ever came here. And so one of the things that I do in addition to that is I also do a lot of our arrangements for the band and for the singers and even choir. I write a lot of the orchestra charts that we do. And then of course we're doing a lot of original material as well. So kind of my role is pretty expansive in that regard. I'm on staff arranger, if you would, and then of course the MD, and then producer because we do recordings and so on. So it's a pretty extensive role that kind of changes with whatever the moment needs to be.
Well, I guess that's something worth noting is for you to be a full-time MD at a church, it requires you to wear more hats than just, writing some basic chord charts and, and rehearsing a band and what have you. You're expanded out into writing, orchestral pieces, vocal pieces, and other larger things to support what's going on there at their church. So for those who might have aspirations to be a full-time MD somewhere one day, there's more than just writing out a number chart and rehearsing a band. At least if you want to earn your keep somewhere, there's more.
Right.
To it. So maybe let's chat through, since someone is full-time at a church doing this, the dynamics between the person doing that from day to day to week, that person to the worship pastor. So this is really a dialogue maybe between BJU and Jason as to how do y'all communicate all this and keep a vision going, and at least what is your dynamics of relationship?
So we also have on staff a what we call a kind of like a director of I don't know, how would you describe it, Jason? More of like a director of, I forgot what the title even is. Basically Carrie's role.
Yeah, program director.
Program director, yeah. And so she's also involved in these conversations. And I'll say this, and Jason can elaborate a lot more, but at the hub of everything that we do here, we use a program called Planning Center. And everything is centered around that. It basically lays out the service. And so all of the planning that we do, all the songs that we do, all the personnel that we do is incorporated into that. And that kind of gives us our roadmap for what all we're going to do. And Jason, you feel free to go ahead and take it and maybe give a little better picture of what Center is.
Yeah, even with Planning Center, we try to plan out, like even this morning, we're meeting 3-4 weeks. So that way, when our guys look on Planning Center, they know what's coming up. It's particularly our tech guys. We'll try to put notes in there, hey, we're going to use a string quartet only this week with band, or this is full orchestra week, or we've really tried to emphasize with our orchestra, please, confirm or decline you're not going to be here. Because we'll pull those seats so we don't have empty seats out there on the platform. I also send out Planning Center to all of our choir, so I invite our choir every week, and that gives me a kind of a visual of, hey, we're going to have this many singers this week or not. It's going to be a lower Sunday, or man, we need to add more space on this area. And it also just, they're part of the team. So, some guys don't invite their choir because it's 100+ people or whatever. And, but I want them to look on Planning Center, look at the music. We've recently just went all digital for our choirs. So we're not even printing music anymore. Everything's digital. So
what is that? So to the choir member, what does that look like?
They bring their own tablet, or even you can read music now off of a phone. We still, even publishers now, the stuff that we're still purchasing, they're sending it now in digital format. You still purchase, however many 175 or 200 people in your choir, however many people you have, but now it's just all digital format. So they're all bringing tablets, phones to read their music from. And I purchased I don't know, I think it was like 10 of the Amazon Fire tablets, not real expensive, just to have on standby for first-time guests or people that just don't have a tablet. And we have those loaded and ready to go each week. And really, it's just cut down a huge amount of cost on just labor making folders and print cost. But Planning Center is key for us, and we use that. I mean, we're on it every single day, multiple times. And so we do updates, song updates. I'll have weeks out where I'll have just stacks of songs on a service, and I'll put a note in there, hey, we're still planning or something. So our band doesn't look at it and freak out. But yeah, everybody's on there, and that's key for us as Planning Center.
Nice. Now,
And Planning Center allows you to, like, we plan every step of the service. So nothing happens that's not on Planning Center. Because like for us, we have our first service starts at 9:15. Our next service starts at 11. And we have a huge turnaround. So in other words, we have to get the people out of the church into their cars. They got to leave. They got to pick up their kids in order for the next, group of people to come in, get their kids checked in, and do service. So we have to be very aware and conscious of the amount of time that we spend. And one of the things that Planning Center allows you to do is we use backing tracks a lot. Most of them we create ourselves. But because of that, we know how long our songs are going to be. One of the variables is, like the pastor may preach more than, the time that we have on there. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, but we have a pretty good idea of how long that service will be. So Planning Center helps us to kind of keep within that framework. Everybody knows what they're doing. So if you have a person that's going to come up and do the welcome, that's not like on the worship team, or that's not the pastor, they know exactly when they're supposed to come out. And one of the things that we do that is a huge help for this is every Sunday morning, typically about 45 minutes before service, we all get together in a meeting place. Everybody that's on stage, minus choir, so the band, the vocal team, the pastor, the programming director, and anybody else that may be speaking from the stage that morning, we all meet and we all run down through Planning Center so we know what every step is. Our audio team's there so they know who's doing what solos, so their mics aren't muted. Our media team, we'll discuss, hey, just make sure you know this at the beginning of the song, it's a guitar solo that leads into that. So the camera's not showing the drummer when it's actually the guitar player who's doing the solo at the beginning of that song. Or here's a break and this is what's happening. So everybody knows from moment to moment everything that's happening, and then that way everything runs as smoothly as possible. And so I'm reminded of a quote I heard years ago from a Christian leader, and I've tried to adopt this just across the board in my life. And he said this, he said, when it says Christian, that means it ought to be better. And I love that quote. And I think that in our churches, we live in a society where people tend to not have as much grace, I guess you would, or flexibility when we kind of come in and do church, and it just seems like it's all off the cuff. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have moments where we may kind of do something off the cuff, but that is not the norm. That's kind of the exception. And so we really try to be mindful, realizing that people are giving of their time to come in, and we want to make sure that we're good stewards of time that the Lord has given us. And, you'd be surprised at how much you can actually get into the service whenever it's really planned out and thought out. And so Jason has amassed a great team of people that everybody's on board and everybody shares that same vision. And he's really led us in a really fantastic way where everybody's bought in. And I believe our services are really powerful and effective, as well as being productive and efficient.
Yeah, there's a cool feature in, we can talk Planning Center a lot, but like one thing that we have incorporated the last few months is Planning Center Live feature. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, Luke, but there's actually a feature now that we have about 6 people that know how to do this, and we assign them each Sunday. And one person will take their phone or whatever, log into Planning Center at the beginning of the service, go to the live feature, and basically you push next. So when the prayer's done, you push next, and it goes to the next step in our service. So if it's a song or something, when the song's done, you push next, and it records the actual times. So on Monday, we come as a team and we're meeting. We always pull up yesterday's service to talk through it, and it'll show in red all your actual times. And the cool feature is like, I mean, for instance, first thing that pops up in my head is like, we'll do a parent-child dedication or something like that. That's a little bit unique, and we don't do it every week. I can go back and how long did that take? With we had 8 children that day. How long did that take? Well, you can go back and look at your actual times and say, oh, it was 9 minutes. So we use that now, and I thought I only spoke 2 minutes. No, you spoke 7 minutes, Jason, on your song introduction. So anyway, Planning Center is big for us. So
great.
Yep. And it's planningscenteronline.com, because I think there's something else just called Planning Center. So you have to make sure you have the word planningscenteronline.com. And whether if you don't have an MD and you're kind of like the lone worship pastor in your church, and you're kind of having to do everything, scheduling people and all that, it takes time up front. But once you get the process down and you train your people, it's as easy as you list the instruments you have, piano, keys, or organ, guitar 1, guitar 2, acoustic, drums, bass. And then if you have a rotating schedule, you basically just click the names of the people that's in that category, as well as singers. Here's my altos, here's my sopranos. You can add as many as you want, or if a lot or a few or whatever. And then you just hit a button that says email these, and it sends out the invite. That's all you do. You don't have to call anybody. And if they're available, they'll get an email that says accept or decline. And if they hit accept, then you're good to go. They can then log on to Planning Center, see what all the songs are. A lot of times, Jason will even attach like parts, like MP3s. So if you're an alto, you can go listen to your part and kind of be listening to what you have. So it's a great prep tool. It's a great time management tool for a worship leader, because once you get it going, then it's just kind of quick to add all those names. And then I'll say this, and then if you're a volunteer, you can go in and block out, like, I know I'm going to be on vacation the first 2 weeks of July. You block that out, so when he goes to schedule you, if it says, it shows up red, then oh, they're going to be gone. Let me get somebody else. Yeah. And we found it's a great way to get 3 or 4 weeks ahead, and it takes a lot of stress off of trying to do week by week by week.
That's good. As far as meetings go, is there a meeting with just worship pastor and MD that you schedule during the week, or is it more part of a larger team? Is it more organic? How do the two of you find the ways that you're going to communicate?
We don't have like a structured set time. I mean, we're in the office together all the time. And we do have a scheduled meeting with the whole team. And then we will schedule meetings with like today, I had a meeting with BJ and our program director, Carrie. And we talked through the next 4 weeks. So we have some of those that we schedule out, but then a lot of times me and BJ are constantly, if it's through text or whatever, popping in the office or something, just, hey, I've got an idea with this, or what do you think about this idea, or would love to do this kind of song, or hey, I just wrote a song this morning, check this out, what do you think? So it's more of that relationship.
Well, BJ, we chatted about Planning Center, but what would you say from a tech perspective, and maybe more specifically software, on a week-to-week basis? What would you say these are the things that, at least at Bell Shoals, you find yourself leaning into often? So maybe you can give some ideas to others out there looking at maybe being MD.
So we live in a few different worlds other than Planning Center, which again, is the hub of everything. I do all of my scoring, my writing, my charts in Finale because we'll build a template. Jason is quite versed in Finale as well, and he's a great editor. He did a lot of editing for me, for several years on a lot of projects. We have this great work relationship on doing this together. So I'll write out an arrangement, whether it's just for vocal team or choir, and then orchestration, and then I'll send that to Jason. He'll open it up, kind of go through it, give any thoughts or suggestions he may have, and then I'll start building from there. Maybe write the orchestration. And then once he gets that, he'll actually do the extractions because he's gracious that way. I hate doing extractions. I'd rather go have my teeth cleaned than doing fractions. I can't stand it. And he enjoys doing it. So it's kind of one of those unique things that, a lot of guys don't have, and I'm blessed to have. And so he'll go through that. And so, so for writing, arranging, and all that, Finale is our go-to tool. Then the other thing is I use Pro Tools every day. So I create all of our backing tracks. So I have my own studio in my office where I'm able to enhance orchestra sounds, a lot of percussion sounds, even guitars if I need to. So we build a lot behind that. And then we have an actual recording studio in the church with Pro Tools. And so we can record solos, and we can record group vocals. We can do editing for our broadcast, and all that kind of thing. And then the third final piece that we use is we trigger all of our tracks through Ableton.
Okay.
And so we don't replace instruments that we have. So like we have a guitar player, I'm not going to replace him with a guitar track. Now, sometimes, we'll beef it up by adding more guitar tracks because we only have one or two, electrics, and they can only play so many parts at one time. So we'll enhance it with that, or I may play more pads, or or pulses and arps and things like that, loops. That gives us kind of that advantage. So so between the three, we live in those world,
Okay.
those programs every day.
Right. So you're building your loops within Ableton versus, say, using a proprietary program, like Prime from Loop Community or what have you. You're taking all these individual loops and building it, and you're launching it from Ableton, which is great. That's
yeah. I create my stuff in Pro Tools, and then we have a guy who's also an MD in one of our campuses who is just an absolute genius at Ableton. And so we actually have a pool of songs that we've collected that all of our campuses can use in their Ableton sessions as well. So all of our campuses use Ableton, and to just enhance our sound, never to replace it, but to just enhance it, and so that we're all able to use.
Now, from a communication standpoint on stage, though you've mentioned things are fairly scripted, planning center, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, but every now and then, maybe the band or singers or tech team needs to know something. You have a way of communicating that to them, BJ, so tell us about that. So
I have a microphone that's in front of me that only the band and the vocal team and our tech team can hear. So every once in a while, you may get a glitch, for example, with Ableton. So we have the tracks in Ableton that has a click on it, and also has a guide that says, lets us know that we're getting ready to sing a verse or a chorus, or, we're getting ready to end the song. And every great once in a while, you'll have something that'll happen where I'll have to basically stop the track as we're playing, and I can call that out. Or maybe one of the players will look at me and kind of give me a very nonchalant, signal that they can't hear themselves. Something weird has happened. And so I'm able to communicate all that sort of thing with the entire team, the people that's on the stage, or the people that's running front of house or monitor console.
Yeah, I think our churches don't realize, and it's okay that they don't realize, and it's good that they don't realize that we on stage, because I too am a worship pastor at a large church in town, that we have all this stuff going on. We're hearing all this stuff in our heads the entire time, that the church has no idea what's going on. And my wife says, I don't know how you do that. Like, how do you hear all that and still stay focused on your task? But yeah, we're
right. I think probably the most amazing thing is probably Jason and the singers, because we have the backing tracks that's talking and reminding people of, verse, chorus, intro, whatever. And then they got me barking in their ears as well. So they hear all that, and somehow he's able to lead, and not even let on that, he's hearing all this stuff in his ear. That to me is pretty amazing.
The only time it's really hard for me, though, through the singing's fine, leading worship, but if I'm talking, if I have to say something and DJ starts talking, I'm too ADD that I want to hear what he's saying. So I pretty much just have to take my ears out at that point.
All right. So to the, and our time's going to wrap up here shortly, to the aspiring MD out there who's seeing this and going, okay, there's something intriguing about this that I might want to look into. If you can narrow this into a short response, maybe, and that is, what kind of musical skills? Now, this is probably going to be unique to church, but say for Bell Shoals, what kind of musical skills would you say, Jason and BJ, minimally a person would need to kind of walk in the door with to maybe want to be a decent MD? Maybe that's a loaded question. Maybe you got an easy answer. I don't know. How would you address that?
For me, it would be important that, if they're a keyboard player, obviously they need to be a strong keyboard player, and then can also speak the language of the band, meaning, to be able to give direction to the drummer or the guitar player. And that might be as simple as, hey, we've got two guitarists. Don't play the exact same position on the neck. So let's change that up. Put a capo on. I mean, just something that's a little different, but knowing enough knowledge to be able to do that, because they've got to give direction, I would say, in more leading a band.
And I would guess is that you, as a worship pastor, have hired this person to take on that responsibility. In other words, the MD is taking stuff off the shoulders of the worship pastor that's historically been the worship pastor's responsibility. You're assuming they know how to talk that lingo and take care. So you're not having to walk in the room and now go fix it.
That's right. And I've got total trust in my MD and BJ. And I never have to worry about, I'm not worrying about those things. I can really focus on truly leading worship that day.
Yeah, that's good. What about your thoughts on that, Beach?
I see my job is I like to be behind the scenes. I don't care to be out front at all. I can hide behind the keyboard and be completely happy. I see my job is making things as easy for Jason as possible, to set him up for success every week, to be able to help him to communicate the message that we have every week to the best that I possibly can. And so communication between Jason and myself, between an MD and the worship leader, is really important. That you got to have, and that really comes with time and trust. And as I said earlier, Jason and I have known each other for a long time. So when I came, we already had a certain level of trust that we didn't have to kind of go through. And so one of the things, and Luke, you and I have talked about this before, Jason's been here for over 5 years. And typically when you go to a church, it takes you about 2, maybe 3 years to establish yourself and to earn the trust of those people that you're leading. It's really no different than with an MD, is that they have to gain people's trust with the band and the vocal team and even the worship leader. And that it's not kind of like a revolving door. I'm here to kind of do my 2 or 3 years and find the next big thing. Is that we both share a common goal and a common vision of what we believe Bell Shoals is to be. And we believe that God has brought us both here to do that. And so the communication of that is I can't even begin to stress the importance of that. And then secondly, is being able to talk. So it's a little different in that, I come from an arranging background and even orchestrating background. So I can speak the language of the singers, the players, and even the orchestra. So I've been blessed to be able to have that. But even if you only work with the band, for example, is you do need to have and learn the ability to communicate. So like you can tell the drummer, hey, I need you and the bass player to kind of get that pattern down on the kick and the bass so it's tighter and you're not, both trying to do something completely different. Or as Jason said, both electric guitar players are playing the exact same pattern on the exact same register of the neck. Because when people are listening, it doesn't, you only hear one, you don't hear two, even though 2 different people are playing, because you're singing the exact same, you're playing the same register. So I need one to play rhythm, play power chords. Hey, I need you to do a delay effect right here. Or I call it dirty it up. In other words, I want a little more overdrive. I want a little more grit to that. And whenever you're able to explain that and communicate that with your players, then you can achieve, much more quickly and efficiently what it is of the sound that you're trying to get. And again, with us, I'm able to even communicate that with singers. Sometimes I could say, hey, altos got a little bit too much vibrato there. Need to straighten that out and all that. Hey, let's go. It's a little too heavy. So let's sing with a little breathier tone right there. So that way your vocal doesn't come out as heavy. Or, hey, pull back a little bit because we got to go somewhere in the song. And if you're letting it all out at the beginning, we have nowhere to go by the time we get to the end of the song. So just being able to communicate is just as effective. If you are a great musician and you can, play the bejeebies out of the piano or out of the guitar as an MD, but you can't communicate with your team, then you're really not going to be effective, because it's not all about you and what your ability is, but also what you're able to get out of the people that you're serving with.
Yeah. Jumping off the context just a little bit, off path a little bit, but I think this works, and that is an MD, that role is also something outside the church. So if we think of, and we can, as Jason as the performer, the artist, you think about touring groups out there all over the place, what have you. What probably a lot of people don't realize is on the stage, there's someone who is the MD in those environments. So I'm thinking about my students who are maybe considering this as a career outside of even the church. Would either of you agree that there's a lot of these aspects that we talked about really transitions over to that? And BJ, you probably firsthand lived some of that. Would you agree that these kind of transfers out to that space? A lot of this?
I do.
Yeah. Jason, go ahead.
No, that's all. I mean, I definitely agree.
Okay. Yeah, because I could have students who are going, I have the giftings of an MD. I can go to the secular space or the church, and I'm saying, one is right, one's wrong, just wherever their path is leading them.
Right. It's very applicable to both. There's a lot of commonality, obviously, with both things. I think probably the greatest distinction is that what we do in church has an eternal value.
Sure.
And so to me, I feel kind of a weightier obligation, in helping to create those worship moments, and so, I talked about communication, I talked about, skill, but you also have to have a relationship with the Lord, because you can't lead people where you're not at yourself or where you've never been.
That's excellent. Excellent. All right. So obviously BJ is MD, and I think this is my last question. As MD, you get to live that life full time there at Bill Schultz. But I'm thinking about the person who may be at a church environment in their community where it's either part-time or they have giftings, but it's purely voluntary. They obviously can't do everything that you're doing, BJ, but maybe to either of you want to speak into the heart of that person who's doing a part-time or volunteer. Maybe what challenges you see there, but maybe any encouragements you have for that person activating in that role from a part-time or volunteer place.
Sure. I'll kick it off and let Jason wrap it up. So let me first say that I have zero aspiration to be a worship leader. This is my calling, what I'm doing. And so I believe that there is a true calling for music directors. And so, I'm not here to try to find my next step or a church where I can, become the worship leader. Not at all. This is my calling, and this is my sweet spot. Now, that being said, I have a friend that is a bass player at a local church. And their church is not at a place where they could hire a music director, but he has volunteered. He's been faithful volunteer at that church for several years. And he started expressing interest, hey, how could I become more involved? And how can I invest more of my time in what I feel like God is giving me, in helping. And so little by little, that worship pastor started kind of, giving a little responsibility to him. And like one of the first things he did was like, hey, I need you just to trigger the Ableton tracks. Sure. And so, so he would do that every week. And as he kind of, learned the flow of that worship leader, then the worship leader started giving him more responsibilities. He got to talk back. And so he became the person that would communicate with the band and even with the singers. And then the worship leader was like, hey, would you be interested in kind of building our Ableton sessions for our playback? And he was like, yeah, I think that would be cool. And so once he started doing that, the church, the worship leader kind of began to communicate, hey, so-and-so is doing this. And is there any way that we could just maybe give him a little bit of an honorarium once a month or, once a week? And so they started paying him. And so now it's actually worked into a part-time position because he kind of built the skills to do that. What's interesting is that worship pastor has since went to another church, but that music director, because this is his home, is still there and actually has really helped the new worship leader transition because he's taking care of all this. He took that weight off the person's shoulder. And so I think if you're a worship leader and you're at church and you don't have someone to do that, is identifying those people that have the ability and the passion and the servant's heart that you can invest in, and that could really make a difference in that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely echoing the whole volunteer thing. I mean, we've got guys on our team that volunteer that you would think are paid staff people because of just their skill level and their passion. And they don't even want to be paid. I mean, they just love helping out. And there are guys, there are ladies that can help. And I've been in all size different churches with leading. And there's some churches that I started out helping them learn how to do click tracks before we did stems. And I can tell you, just take it slow. It would be literally like, all right, we're going to play click for 4 weeks in rehearsals before we bring it to Sunday. And we're going to do one song this week with click. And then it just builds off that. I mean, I had a lady that's in her 60s, close to 70s playing our piano that I ended up having her fire the stems. And of course, my wife was like, are you seriously going to ask her? Yeah, I'm going to ask her. And I mean, can you push the space bar? Yes. It's start and stop. That's all you need to do. When we go to song number 2, push 2, space bar. And I wasn't asking her to MD, and it would literally be some Sundays where I'd just turn around and we're still singing, stop the click track. We're off. So don't stress out about it. But there are people, I'm telling you, use them. They're there to serve. And I've always been surprised, like, wow. But don't be discouraged just because, hey, I'm having to do it all right now, or I only have, I've had a choir of 10 people before, or whatever it is. There are people there, and you have to dig. You might have to dig a little deeper to find who they are and maybe some skills they didn't even know they could do. So don't let it be a discouraging thing.
That's good. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking a few moments to kind of help us unpack what it is an MD is and can do. It's really enlightening. And it's one of those positions that more churches are beginning to take on, which is great. Because it allows guys like you, Jason, to think more of the high level spiritual element of the church, and let someone who has the passion for the nitty gritty like Beej to kind of take it on and do it. So that's awesome. So well, I appreciate it. For sharing that with our students and just encouraging whomever all gets to see this of what's going on, and exciting for Bill Scholes, the continued growth, new senior pastor, and the vision that's going on there. That's extremely cool. So any last words before we kind of wrap this up?
None for me. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, BJ, for your time. And I really, really appreciate it. And this has been super. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Here. All right.